Oh, guys, this is like, I just want to say thank you so much for making time for this. Like, I know you guys all have children, and like, it's not easy breaking away for a little bit, especially to get on another Zoom call. So I just want to say thank you. And obviously I love you guys a lot. But yeah, thank you for being here. This is great.
I'm so glad that you invited us to do this. So like, I have a lot of words, but I'll save them.
No worries, guys. And here's the thing, like, I purposefully didn't want to give you too much information because my heart with this whole thing is to have like a kind of just a personal, informal conversation with my friends. Because there's a time and a place, me and Doran were talking about this a little earlier. There's a time and a place for the kind of like thought out, calculated answer. And that's wonderful. Like, that's really great. But I think there's something really important about just kind of a natural response of your personal experience. There's no right or wrong answers. There's no like, it's just like, hey, this is my experience. And I think I love and respect all of you guys so much. And I just think I really want, for me personally, this is primarily for me personally, to hear from you, your experience. And I just think it would be beneficial for other people to hear as well. So if you guys are cool with that, we can jump in.
Right on. Yeah.
Okay, so let's just really quickly kind of start things off with, you can share your name and where you live and what keeps you busy, just so if anybody does check this out, they know who's who.
Cool.
Let's start with you, D.
Yeah, my name is Dorian. I live in Temecula, California. And what keeps me busy is my beautiful wife and my loving daughter. And yeah, that's about it, honestly. Like, that's what really keeps me busy. Work, of course, but I don't really call that busy, so.
Especially right now, huh?
Yeah.
Jack, you want to roll?
Sure. My name is Jackie. I live in San Diego, California. And what keeps me busy during the week is I have 3 under 10. One that's about to be 10 in 2 weeks, which is crazy. But yeah, that mainly keeps me busy.
Yeah, I can imagine.
That providing leadership to a church with your husband, no big deal.
Oh yeah,
no big deal.
Maybe that too.
And
I'm
honestly,
faster.
leading churches is child's play compared to staying home with kids. Let's just be real. Steve.
Yeah.
Oh, Steve.
Oh, my bad. Yeah, so my name is Stephen Land. I'm about 5 exits up from, I call her Jack. So it's Jackie, but I might say Jack because that's my sister right there. But I'm about 5 exits up from her here in San Diego. Member of Restored South Bay, staff member, and that's kind of what keeps me busy during the day, is being on staff and serving and loving our people.
Love it, man. Johnson's.
Yeah, I'm Gabriel Johnson. Keeps me busy is 3 little ones and 1 more on the way soon.
I know.
And work, really. So yeah, we live in Temecula, and we're members of Restored Temecula.
Yep. And I'm Erica Johnson, his wife, all the things he said. I homeschool. So our kids are 6, 4, 2, and soon to be new. So we'll have 4, 6 and under.
You're like, are you 2 or 3 weeks away, right?
Like 3 to 4, yeah.
Okay, I was close enough.
Yeah.
You're ready to go, man. You're ready to go. I love
yep.
it. Okay, well, perfect, guys. Like, just to kind of give context, the purpose with this whole kind of conversation, like my goal really, is I really want to gain some understanding of the experience of being Black in America. Now, because here's the thing, like, I think the greater understanding that someone has, myself included here, I think it's going to lead to greater empathy. And I think empathy ultimately will promote unity. And that's my heart with this whole thing. So again, just gain some understanding of your personal experience that hopefully then will lead to, I'm certain it will lead to some empathy that, man, that can be catalytic to promote unity. So I think the timing of this conversation is totally appropriate, with the recent murders of George Floyd, and even recently Ahmaud Arbery. I remember, this is fairly new to me. I remember a few years ago when something similar happened to Eric Garner, and I remember it was the first time I ever kind of came face to face, because I could see it on a screen. You'd hear things, and there'd be things in the past, but I was just kind of more oblivious to it, honestly. But I remember the Eric Garner thing really, like, it affected me deeply. And then I had a similar experience with Ahmaud Arbery, and then with George Floyd a couple of days ago. I'm a little behind. I've been off Instagram for a little while, and my wife kind of, she brought me up to speed, and it was just like, man. So what I really want to do, guys, is just kind of have a bit of an informal conversation with my friends here, primarily for my own benefit, but I also think it really would be beneficial for anybody like that tunes into this thing. Kind of, they get the benefit of being the fly on the wall of our conversation. You know what I mean? So that's the heart behind all this. So if you're cool with it, I just want to kick off with some maybe like conversation starters. You guys okay with that?
Yep.
Yeah.
Great. Okay. So first one, in light of this kind of pattern that we're witnessing of innocent Black men kind of being singled out and then killed. So you, as yourself, as a Black man or as a Black woman, what are the emotions that you're experiencing personally with this? And I'm going to open it up. So just round robin.
I can start. Sometimes when these kinds of things happen, especially knowing that we're only seeing what either is reported in the news, but knowing that it's been going on for centuries, you can sometimes, for me as a Black woman, I can sometimes want to not see it. It's like, I want to just have my day. I'm busy enough as it is, let alone trying to like be some sort of activist. But with having 3 children, 1 more on the way, so 4 out of the 4, 3 of those will be boys, are boys. And it has taken on new meaning to me, raising 3 Black sons in this day and age, and like seeing the things that happen. And so for me, the emotion has been just like wrecked and heartbreaking to the point of weeping, which that's not always my initial response. Sometimes it takes me a minute to like process what actually happened. But with Ahmed a couple weeks ago, and then George yesterday, just weeping. Because I can feel like what their mothers or sister or brother or family member might feel. And I know that like my kids aren't, or let alone my husband, is not exempt from that possibility happening to them. So it just takes on a new meaning, especially when you're a mother, to see innocent lives taken. And it's just, it's caught me off guard, actually, how emotional I have been over it. But I think it's a good thing, because there was a period of time where I thought maybe, like, do I not feel things? Like, not just about Black lives, but just there's so much devastation in the world and news that sometimes you can almost feel like you're desensitized to it unless you see it right in front of your face. But the fact that it led me to such a place of heartbreak, it was sad that that had to happen to bring that on, but encouraging in a sense of like, no, this is real. And like, this is actually how Jesus feels. Obviously him on a whole nother level, because it's like, these are his kids being taken. So yeah, for me, it's just been heartbreak and like wrecked to the point of like not being able to function for hours. when the emotion hits. So
No, I appreciate you being so candid, EJ.
yeah.
Yeah, I can totally just empathize with that. I feel like it actually took me a while to watch the video of Ahmaud Arbery being shot. I didn't want to see it again.
Yeah.
I didn't want to see it again. And again, meaning not that I had seen his murder previously, but just in general, seeing another innocent Black man or Black woman being shot. And so, and when I did, it was just the same type of response. I'm not typically a very like externally emotional person, but it was just, it's just so devastating, and thinking, you know, the fear that he must have had in the last moments of his life. It just was really just heartbreaking.
Yeah, for me, it was just disappointment, because it's like, are we here we go again. It's happening again. I remember when I first read about Arbery and then George Floyd, I was just like, we're still dealing with this, and that's, I like to think more highly of our country than that, but I also know that's in our past, and we're still healing from a lot of those wounds of the past, and we live in a broken world too. So you know, as much as it disappoints me, I also recognize it's kind of a reality. We're going to continue to see bad things happen, but yeah, that just it's just disappointing to me to continue to see that, and then of course what it all the unrest that kind of ensues from all that, you know, the rioting, the protesting, you know, both sides. It's just like, golly, man, here we go again. Like, just sheer disappointment for me.
Yeah, Gabe.
Yeah, dang. Hearing that just really affected me again, you know, just hearing you guys talk about it. For me, it's not surprising. Yeah, I'm shocked. I'm angry. I'm bewildered. And like let's not get it twisted too. Like in March, it was Breonna Taylor got shot, you know, inside of her home, you know, 8 times, you know. Yeah, so as a Black male, scared, you know. I was blessed to drive around in a Lexus because my in-laws gave me this beautiful car. But in back of my mind, I'm always like, when am I going to get stopped in this neighborhood or in this city? Or if they say, you know, I'm in the wrong place at the wrong time and I look like somebody that did this. So yeah, fear strikes me as well. But then there's this reality of hope in Jesus that I just get extremely excited about, because then we can embark on this awareness that leads us to going towards redemptive love, you know? And so I get really pumped up about that as well. But at this point, you know, with everything going on and the civil unrest, I feel like living my grandfather's life back in 1964, you know. It's treacherous, you know, but I do have the audacity of hope and in Jesus. So that's where I am.
Thanks, Steve.
Yeah, man. For me, there's a lot of complex emotions and feelings. I think the prevailing one right now is exhaustion, which has been something that's been said a lot from a lot of people of color, but just really exhausted by everything that's seen. I don't personally haven't watched the video. Don't need to watch. I didn't watch Ahmaud's video. I don't need to watch another black man or a black woman get killed. I know what it's like. I didn't need to, like, we don't need to see that. I think, Tom, you were talking earlier about growing up and some of the things that really kind of brought your awareness, like brought to the forefront some of the things that are real. But it's like, man, through studying and just kind of knowing and seeing pictures of lynchings, like, I don't need the video to confirm what I know has been going on in America since day one, right? The treatment of people from the African diaspora. Like, I don't need to be reminded of that and see that video to have my heart broken. I'm a parent too, so like all of us parents, it has gone from me, like, I'm exhausted because I'm scared sometimes, or not sometimes, I'm scared all the time. Because when you see everything that happens, when I see people being killed, I think, okay, then this is just another way they're going to kill a black person, right? You can't be at home, you can't be in your own home and then try to go to the door because somebody's walking in, because then that could be a police officer thinking that that's your house, they're going to shoot you. You can't be a licensed gun permit person carrier, want to show the police officer that you got it, because then they're going to shoot you. You can't tell them, hey, okay, then I might be wrong, just take me to the squad car. They're going to keep kneeling on top of your neck until you die. You can't do anything. You can't leave the house. And so it's like that exhaustion I carry with me personally, but then I look at my son and I just imagine all the things that he might experience that I experience, having stuff thrown at you, being looked at as being less than human, being called the N-word. And then that really begins to break my heart. My hope does get to Jesus, but right now, I'm just in a state of just being exhausted and fearful, because that's our children. They're like our hearts walking outside of us. And imagining that your heart is going to go through that again, and that there's nothing that you can really do in that situation, because my son may not be strong enough to walk away when the people are looking at him like he's a dog. My son may not be strong enough to walk away when somebody has just thrown something at him when he's walking. My son might have a temper and might want to react. And then I got to see my son on the news. Like that exhaustion of just all of that in my head for myself and for my son, like that scares me. Just leaves me tired sometimes. Or a lot, not sometimes, a lot of times. But then there is the hope, like Dorian said, there is a hope when we get to have conversations, when brothers and sisters, allies like you, Tom, who reach out and want to talk, like that brings that encouragement, that brings me up out of that exhaustion. But the initial response is always just like, I'm not surprised. I already know what it is out there. It's just here we go, another confirmation.
Yeah.
Yeah, guys, I think like for me growing up, I mean, I had parents that, like, we all do the best we can, you know, and I had parents that did the best they could, and they loved me. I knew they loved me. And I remember just instruction from my parents trying to give me wisdom about staying safe and making wise choices and all that. But one of the things that really stands out to me is the uniqueness of how you guys have to parent your children, given the circumstances. And to be honest, it as an outsider looking in on the Black community, it makes me really angry that you'd have to, like, I remember having a conversation with a friend, and he was telling me that, like, his dad always told him, like, you cannot wear your hoodie, like, you cannot wear your hood up in public. You can't, like, his dad did not allow him to do that. Because, like, my dad would never taught me, like, I never had a conversation like that with my father, right? And the reason I share that, I don't want to shift the focus onto me at all. The reason I share that is because I think there's, I'm going to use a word that I think some people will be offended by, but I think it's important. I think there's an ignorance. And And I think that there's like this negative connotation with that word ignorance. It's disappointing, but I mean, ignorance, it really just means like a lack of knowledge, a lack of information. And I believe that you guys would agree with me. All of us on this Zoom call are ignorant to certain things. Like there's certain aspects of academics I am ignorant to. There's certain things about, what my wife experiences as a woman that I am ignorant to. Like there's all sorts of things that all of us are not informed about. So maybe a helpful question would be something like, from your experience, what are some things that people outside of the Black community might be ignorant of? I mean, we already talked about how you have to raise your kids given the circumstances, but along that same vein, what are some things that people outside of the Black community might be ignorant of that it might be helpful to have this conversation? And when I say that, like maybe they're uninformed or they're misinformed as to what the Black community's experience has been and is currently. Is that fair?
Yeah, that's fair. You guys want me to jump on this grenade?
Go for it.
Tom, honestly, you put it very very well, and I think it is ignorance. I also think the enemy actually uses ignorance and also pairs that with denial, and really tries to further the racial unrest and puts it into this darkness, and that's the hope that we have in Jesus, though, that you shine that light into the darkness, and I think with our white brothers and sisters, it's an opportunity to actually say, I am ignorant to this, but I'm not going to sit up here and deny that fact. I'm going to get some education on this and try to have some certain amount of empathy towards my Black brothers and sisters. But I think some of the things that we grow up with is like my mom and dad used to tell me that I have to work at least 4 times harder than my white counterpart because I'm already coming into the system behind, which I had that conversation when I was probably about 6-7 years old with my mother and father, and they had it with my 2 brothers as well, so I heard it when they told my older brother, and I heard it when they told my little brother, and I heard it when they told me. So I heard it 3 different times. And the reason behind that is because it's just, it's systemic, so it's a system that's been produced all the way from slavery. So like 400 years ago, this is how it's been. So for them to tell me I have to work extra, I'm always having this in the side of my mind. I'm like, I just want to be normal. I don't want to actually have to work harder. I just want to be Dorian. I just want to just go to school and not worry about anything. But I had to actually say, okay, if I'm not getting 2 + 2 right now, then I'm gonna fall way behind because nobody is going to actually give me that tutoring or make sure that I'm actually advancing in my thought and in my knowledge. So that's one of them for me. The hoodie resonates with me too. I can definitely attest to that. My mom and dad wouldn't buy me hoodies. It was just crew neck sweaters. I didn't have an opportunity to have a hoodie when I was growing up.
Bro, you look good in a crew neck sweater. Okay? You're
But it's that mentality to coincide with this, like, hey, this guy has a hoodie on, so he might be dangerous. It's called hoodie for crying out loud. Like it's a dangerous walk that we have to walk, and we have to teach our children the same thing.
Mm-hmm. On the hoodie comment, several months ago, we took our kids to Knott's Berry Farm, and they had remember those little play guns?
Oh.
They have the ones that look fake with like the little poppers, you can hear it pop. And then they have the ones that they do look fake, but they're, were they black or were they like
They're
silver.
like silver finish.
They looked more realistic. And the boys, of course, little boys want to play guns, and they wanted the more realistic ones. And I think you got them, just like not thinking about it. And when I saw that, I immediately, and I'm not going to remember the name right now, but I remember a story of a little boy getting shot for having a toy gun.
Tamir Rice.
Say that?
Tamir Rice in Ohio.
And that story immediately came back to my mind, and I was like, we can't take these home. We have to return those and get the fake looking ones, because I'm not going to take that risk to let my little black sons be running around, our neighborhood or whatever, which they're little, they don't really run around, but even still, I'm like, no, they're not going to play with those. So we took them straight back. And that was like a sad moment, because I didn't fully explain to them why, but I did explain to them why, but I didn't say it was because of the color of their skin, because I honestly am still like praying on how to like broach the race subject with them. But I just explained that if someone thinks you have a real gun, even if you're just playing and you're a kid and they think it's real, that could be considered like scary for them, and they could potentially shoot at you with a real gun. And like the fact that I had to explain that to a 5-year-old at the time and a 3-year-old, that's like the country we live in. And then like the trying harder, like being the best, I can 100% relate to that. I don't even know if my dad, they must have had a conversation of some sort, or like it was just understood through osmosis. Like, if I'm going to get along in this world, I have to be the best. And that's what I sought out to do. Like middle school, graduated, there's this award, Lady of the Realm, like earned that award. High school, graduated top 10 in my class. College, did all the things there. Grad school, like won the favor of all my professors, like got hired to work there after, in a position that was held for one person. And that is like the mentality that I have lived with. Like I'm coming into like a better understanding of like my identity in Christ, but like knowing that I have to show these people that I am worthy of love and acceptance, and I don't fit the quote stereotype. And that's just something that I think as a Black person you just live with. And it's almost like this false sense of like security or something. Like if I can be the best and I can show them that I'm worthy, then it's going to be okay, at least a little bit more okay for me. And even with that, I remember this one story, this guy in high school, he looked straight at me. He was just another student, but he looked at me straight in the eyes and he was like, Erica, you are so smart and you are so like talented and so good at everything you do. And I was like, oh, thanks. Like it was just kind of a weird moment. I was like, thank you for like this compliment. And he's like, it just sucks that you're Black.
Wow.
Because basically none of that's going to matter. I was like, all right, glad I know where I stand with you. And that's just one story, but yeah, that's something that you deal with as a Black person.
Yeah, and there's, man, talk about grenade, Dorian. There's a lot to unpack here. Yeah, I can think of a lot of instances. One that's, Erica and I were just discussing this the other day. Now, I didn't really understand it growing up, but now it makes so much more sense to me. My parents always made the point, like, you guys need to like dress good, you need to look good, like you don't leave this house without like, like looking a certain way, like, and want to look presentable was kind of always the term that was used in my household.
Mm-hmm.
And I really, it always just, it's like, yeah, it makes sense. You know, I just kind of accepted that. But I don't think it really resonated with me until like now having my own children and thinking about it. It's like, you know, if my kids go out looking any old way, barefoot, you know, hopping in the car, messy face, whatever, like
ashy legs,
like, you know, like
it's not gonna go well.
Someone's gonna look at us and think like, oh, that poor black family, you know, oh, they look like they're struggling. Like, people don't think about that when they look at an average white family that maybe is the same way. Like, they just don't.
It's cute to be dirty when you're
right?
a little white kid coming from the park and like your face is sweaty and you've got dirt streaks. Like, and that's not something that's like said. It's just like one of those things that you just feel. And it's not, no one's going to say that to you, but you can feel, you just get good at like feeling things out and understanding like what the vibe is.
Yeah. And so
You
like,
get that mentality of those dirty ghetto kids.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, I think back, I knew some of those kids were, and I kind of had similar thoughts about it. I was like, oh, that kid, you know, always coming to school with raggedy clothes. Maybe he just parents let him get dressed, and he just picked up what was on the floor, and like they're just like whatever, you know. And so it's there's that kind of thing that I've picked up on, that I was like, oh, I see why they would say that now, because you don't want to be perceived in that way. You want to be perceived as, you know, an upstanding, you know, citizen of the country, you know, or of your community. So that's one thing. One that this is probably the most blatant thing I've seen, and it speaks to some of the systematic issues I think in the country, is particularly when it comes to, I've noticed this in healthcare, and I've seen this happen at least 3 or 4 times in our experience, where we'll show up, you know, at an urgent care or an emergency room for one of our kids or something, or for one of us or something like that. And the immediate conclusion that's always jumped to whenever we show up is, oh, you must be military. I'm like, oh, you have Medi-Cal. I'm like, no, I don't. Oh, you have Kaiser? Like, no.
Nothing wrong with those things. It's just like an assumption. Like instead of like ask, like what insurance do you have?
I wouldn't think to ask somebody that. Like, just assume that. I would just be like, what insurance do you have? I don't know. And you know, oh, you have HMO? I'm like, no, I don't. And it's just like, it's funny how some of these kind of things are just like, wow, where is that conclusion getting drawn? Or we had one instance where we took one of our kids into urgent care, and we got kind of one story about treatment for our kid. And we went to the emergency room, and there was several options that weren't even presented. I know why they weren't presented, because there were more expensive options, but they just assumed like, oh, you probably can't afford these, so here's 3 options for us. Like, wait, what about this other option? Oh, well, that's an option too, and we can bring that person in to talk about it with you. It's more expensive, but I'm like, I'm not interested in how expensive it is. I want to know what all the options are. And so that was just kind of interesting to me, how I had seen that. And I was like, man, like
why do they assume that?
Why are these things assumed? And I mean, you don't know me. You don't know anything about, you know, what I can afford, what I can't afford. Why would you assume certain things? Are you looking at me and assuming that, you know?
And even if they're not, you can't help but wonder. And I think that's the point.
And that's the thing, right? You can't help but wonder those kinds of things. So, yeah, those are the things that I've kind of, you either figure out how to get ahead of and kind of deal with, or you kind of accept and make sure you correct along the way. And so, yeah, those are a couple examples. You know, even the clothes you choose to wear, you have to think twice about. You know, like, do I go out in baggy pants and a hoodie and, you know, wearing some Jordans or something? Like, you know, am I get seen a certain way if I walk into a store with my hands in my pockets, or am I going to, you know, looked at a certain way, get followed around or something like that? Like, I remember one time, I grew up in East County, San Diego. And if anybody knows anything about East County, San Diego, yes, your mind goes there about all the things about East County. Yes, I grew up around there. And so I remember one time my brother and I went to the theater, and we just, we're in our casual clothes, like whatever. And we're walking through the theater, and at some point we we pass a mother with 2 small children. And as soon as she makes eye contact with us and immediately disconnects her eyes, looks straight forward, grabs her kids, and starts moving very quickly past us. We're like, what was this? Did you just see that? We both had the same reaction immediately, looked at each other like, did you just see what I just saw? Like, why did she feel the need to grab her kids and look at us and then start walking off real fast? Like, we look like we're going to do something? Like, and so those are the kinds of things that, like, you can't help but kind of question why certain things happen the way they do. And you're not looking for them. That's the thing sometimes. I'm not looking for these things. These are just things like kind of happen. I'm like, it makes me question. And so there's again where you have to kind of think twice about those kinds of decisions, what you wear, how your family gets presented, what you have to stand up for when you go certain places, particularly in the healthcare industry. So yeah, those are a few of them.
I think one of the ignorances of what you were talking about, Tom, that people don't understand is I think that almost every single Black person that I've talked to has had a situation like this. Like every single one of us has had something, and I'm multiracial and stuff, and so I think sometimes people think I might be exempt from that. But I've had many situations behind closed doors where maybe I had my hair straight that day and I wasn't as tan and they didn't know I was Black. And where people have had one lady, she was a teacher, and this wasn't in Restored at all, it was years ago. And she was basically complaining about all of her Black students and how they were so disrespectful and she didn't know what to do with them. And then someone at this dinner party was like, "Hey, did you know Jackie was half Black?" I was like, okay, well, that just changed the vibe of the dinner party, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then it was on me now to be the voice and speak for all of the Black children across America and tell her why they were being not respectful to her. And it was like, well, first off, are you a respectful person? Are you a respectable person?
Right.
Let's start there. But so I think, and that's just one. I mean, I've had quite a few other ones where people didn't realize I was Black and have said some very just insensitive and racist things. And I think that I think it's good for people to know that this isn't just it doesn't just happen to the people that you see in the news.
Mm-hmm.
It happens to every single Black person. And I think to be more have more empathy and be more understanding of the people that are in front of you.
Yeah.
I'm so glad you said that real quick, because I've wondered about that. People that Gabe has a lot of cousins who can pass for white. They're half. And I've always wondered kind of what that behind the scenes conversation might be. And it's hello, I am who you're I am the person or the people that you're talking about. And so I feel like that's a super important perspective. So
yeah, one of the situations I encountered, we were overseas and we were in someone's home talking with them, and this person didn't know that I was half Black, and they were starting to tell us a story about the history of this monument that we had passed by the airport. And the person who had picked us up from the airport had told us, like, that's not a good statue. It's honoring basically when these like tribal people, these African people were like murdered by the people who were coming to colonize, and how God basically, or they thought that God was on their side. And so that was, you know, days before. Later on, this family, they're asking us if we had wanted to go and see the monument. And me and my husband are thinking like, wait, isn't that the same monument that the other people were telling us wasn't a good thing to go to, and they were disappointed that it was there, and all of these things. And so, you know, we start this conversation. Another person that we were with tried to be proactive in saying, oh, Jackie's half Black. But the person didn't hear that being said and continued on with, you know, God was really on their side, and he gave them a victory. And, you know, it ended up, I think they obviously could start to tell, like, it was bothering me. And the other person said again, oh, Jackie's half Black. And, you know, it came out, and it turned into just a really ugly, again, another ruined dinner party. But like just a really bad conversation of something that they really thought, you know, was true and was right. And where I like had to, you know, remind them of certain things in different cultures that are not right about that aren't right, you know. And at the one point in the conversation, one of the people had said, you know, if this was another race, like they wouldn't have acted the way that they did, speaking poorly of Black people. And I had to tell her, did you know in America, a majority of the serial killers, people who chop other people up, put them in their basement, those are not African Americans. Those are other ethnicities. Yeah. So it's not just about one particular ethnicity, it's about other things that are not that.
Yeah.
Oh man. I would say one thing that kind of that people would be ignorant to, and there's only 5 of us, so if there are other people who do get a chance to watch this, there's a pyramid that I saw recently, and I think that would be pretty helpful. It talks about overt white supremacy, and then it talks about covert white supremacy and things that our white brothers and sisters who may not know, like how racism and prejudice and this racialization of our society prevails because of ignorance, right? And so I would definitely challenge people to kind of look at that and see the many different ways, because we're only covering a couple of different perspectives here. There are many different ways that a lot of people are ignorant to that this prevails. Mass incarceration, redlining. You can even go to something, we're parents, we can even go to something talking about property taxes in school districts and how our property taxes affect the amount and the property value affects the amount of money that's going to certain schools in certain neighborhoods. So schools like in Southeast San Diego may not get as much money as schools in La Jolla and whatnot. Why? Because we've set it up where property values are like that. But 2 things that I think I would point out that are important is I will go with the something that Eric, I just want to call you EJ so bad. I'm just so used to just going straight
Join the club, Steve. Join the club.
I just want to call you EJ.
EJ is perfect.
That she pulled up that I think is important is that we are more than likely the exception to the rule of Black people that you're going to meet. The education that we have, the blessings, you know, because we believe that this was God ordained, that He had a hand in this, so that the blessings that our parents had to be able to afford to put us in certain situations. So when our white brothers and sisters, or even people of color who are ignorant, who don't know about this, go to, why can't you just pull yourselves up by the bootstraps? Like, yo, our bootstraps ain't the same, right? It just ain't the same like that. My parents worked hard. My mom, by God's grace, my grandmother put my mom in a high school that was in a predominantly white rich neighborhood. And my grandmother worked her butt off to try to get my mom. My mom and my aunt were the only two out of five were the only two out of five that were able to go to that school. Everybody else went to the ghetto school that was low funded. My mom had to pull some strings at the school district to get me in there. So like my experiences, it was by God's grace that I was able to be able to do that. It was the military that paid for me to go to Baylor, right? So it's like I got afforded opportunities that a lot of people didn't get. So don't base your, oh, Stephen did it.
Yeah.
You know, EJ got a degree, she did it.
Yeah.
Jack is smart, she got it. Dorian, my man, he's doing things. Jack, you smart, dog. Yeah. You know you good.
I was gonna say I don't have a degree.
Hey, you don't, but you're like, you present yourself very well and you're good, and like, so people would know that. But we are the exception a lot of times to the rule that's coming up. Now a lot of that's changing with our generation because there are more people our age who are African American, who are college educated. But we're still in the minority of people who have graduated college and have gone or have success in certain areas, right? So don't look at us and think that you can just, why can't, if Stephen did it, why can't? Because I run into that quite often from a lot of my white brothers and sisters where they'll say that, like, well, if you're doing good, why can't? It's like, you don't know.
Yeah.
Like, you don't know everything that went into that to get me out of there. And then another thing I would say, especially because we are Christians, and so I do believe that it is something that needs to be talked about, the elephant in the room, how Christianity has played a role in creating or perpetuating racism throughout the world, right? It's like Christians are that. Christians came from Europe to go to Africa with this mindset: we're saving these savage people, these people that don't know any better. They need to hear that, right? And so then that they impressed that on them when they went to Africa and do that. A lot of slave owners in the South were Christians, and they used the Bible to talk about that. Now, that's not saying that they obviously they were interpreting wrong, they were reading it wrong, but there are other Christians in our present day who still perpetuate, who do racist things in there, and so it's happening in the church too. So don't just think that it's just this outside, not people in the church thing. You know, it's people in the church who are doing the same thing also. And so we can't be even ignorant to that and understanding how much the gospel really needs. It's us. Like it's us that we need to be talking to a lot more, and not just thinking that, oh, those are non-Christians that are out there killing those black people. No. He probably was sitting next to you last Sunday at church before he got filmed doing that.
Yeah.
So it's like,
yeah, guys, that's so helpful. I do think that's why I'm so like glad to be having conversations like this, is because you just don't know what you don't know. And I think every human being has blind spots in their life, myself included. I know you guys would agree. And that's why I think relationship is so vital, to be able to identify things that you can't identify yourself. So that's so helpful, guys. You guys have all talked about Jesus, like we are Jesus people unapologetically. And so maybe I want to throw this out at you. Considering your personal experience, how has the gospel of Jesus personally ministered to you in light of this conversation?
I want to speak about a conversation that I literally just had yesterday with Herrick, actually. And I asked if he would pray for me because I was not okay. And he did Herrick, for anybody who's watching outside, he's our other pastor that co-leads with Tom. And he, he's like, I just want to listen for a minute and hear what the Holy Spirit might want to say. And he had this beautiful image that came to his mind of, I believe it was me painting like this beautiful masterpiece. And after I was done with the masterpiece, someone or something came and tried to mar or, you know, mess up the work of art that I had been working on. And then in the next scene that he saw, that same painting was taken and put in like this fancy museum, like art museum, behind a piece of glass. And all of a sudden the like scar was like, the actual scar wasn't removed, but like the darkness of the scar was taken away, and you could just see the outline of it. And he was just like, you know, I don't know if that means anything to you, or like what, you know, what you think about that. And honestly, like while he was talking, I had this image, like as he's describing each part of the scene and like the painting, I had this image of my sons being the masterpiece. My daughter too, but I just was specifically thinking about my sons because of, you know, the current circumstances and like how much hardship comes to Black men in this country. And like they were the masterpiece. Like as a mom, when I look at my babies, they're perfect. You know what I mean? Even in, you know, their sinful nature, like to me, it's like they can do wrong, but you know what I'm saying? Like they're just so beautiful, right? And that's the way I see them. That's the way Gabe sees them. But when the world looks at them, right now they're super cute, but one day they're gonna be adults. And the world is gonna try to put their like scar on them and try to project their view of what they think these little Black boys, soon to be Black men, look like and are. And the picture, the painting being put behind the glass and like the scar still being there, but like the actual, basically it kind of like made it more beautiful almost, like just the outline of it was to me representing Jesus, and how no matter what the world says about my sons or my husband or any of us, the way Jesus sees us is perfect because of his sacrifice.
Beautiful.
And literally at the same time, me and Herrick, like when he started talking about like the outline of the scar, and like at the same time, both of us were like, oh my gosh, like the scars on Jesus's hands and feet, like they're still there for us to see and like to remember what he did for us. And so like in that moment, it was just like this peace came over me of knowing that no matter what I might go through, or my sons or my daughter in this world in relation to race, the way Jesus sees them is perfect, and there's hope found in him and him alone, really. And the other thing that came to mind, like as we were talking, and this is of course like the tears were just like flowing, I was like, wow, is that I truly realized, and I think I texted this to you guys the other night, but I truly realized like in that moment, like, oh my gosh, like Jesus literally was murdered in the most heinous act of injustice ever. And so even in this, he not only like sympathizes with us, he fully empathizes and understands to the full depth, even deeper than any of us could ever understand, like what it feels like to be treated as other and different and murdered because of it. But then he rose, and it was just like that in and of itself is like all I needed to hear. I was like, okay, Jesus has got it. Like, I mean, we still need to have these conversations, but like, and this is such a good start. But in light of all of it, like that's how the gospel for me personally, just very recently, has like covered it. And not to say like I'm still gonna have moments where I am weeping over the injustice, because that is the heart of Jesus. But like knowing that he really does see and get it, and he's already won, is like just beyond. So anyway, that's how the gospel.
Beautiful, girl.
Yeah.
Can I want to just hop in real quick and just say something. Erica, you had said something, and I just want to say, like, I know a lot of emphasis is being placed on, because there are a lot of Black men who are being killed, but Black women are also being killed, and not only that, Black women do face a lot of unseen oppression and suppression behind closed doors and spaces. And me as a man, I have privileges that afford me not to experience the same thing that Black women do. So I don't want to, like, y'all ladies, hats off to y'all as Black women surviving this, watching your sons go out the door, praying that Jesus will bring them back safely every day, hoping that nothing happens. Like, I have my son, but I didn't birth my son. So I don't know something to carry a kid and then have to hope that Jesus is taking care of him, that the Spirit is like with him and protecting him and bringing him back, bringing that child back home each day. So just hats off to you ladies. But I would, my encouragement comes from, or just my hope in Jesus, and I've been seeing him minister to me, going back to the exhaustion. And when I see that there are other people of color who are tired of having what we would say probably is like a level one conversation. This is like a level one conversation where people who don't know or just, this is their first foyer, you're 3 feet in, or you're in the kiddie pool right now on this social justice thing. You're like, I don't know what's happening out there. You're kind of wading in the kiddie pool, trying not to hurt yourself, right? And there are Black people, there are Black people out there who are, and other people of color who are tired of having this conversation, because they're like, America, we've been trying to have this conversation. You know what? You ain't listening, so now we just about to mess stuff up, right? Mm-hmm. And we don't care. But my hope in Jesus, in my exhaustion, because a lot of those people are exhausted from having that, but my hope in Jesus and the Spirit just gives me energy and encourages me to continue to have these small walk with people, be gracious and kind. Why? Because of the grace that's been afforded to us. Yeah. Like, we didn't deserve anything that Jesus did for us. We don't deserve any blessings, anything that God gives us. Nothing. But because he has done that graciously, and I've experienced that in my life, now I'm able to be patient and walk with other brothers and sisters who are fair skinned or white, or who don't know anything about the social justice thing. I'm able to walk with that. So that's how I've kind of been seeing him minister to me, just through the encouragement and the ability to have these conversations and not be frustrated, not be tired, not want to just, because I know some people who are just like, I don't want to talk to white people no more. Like, I don't just want to, and like, that is for real because of just what's going on. And I can, without Jesus, I can see why they are there. But because of Jesus, like, I'm grateful and that he's been ministering to my heart to have hope in him in that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's dope. That's dope, Stephen. And EJ. I love the whole masterpiece thing. And yeah, man, the exhaustion, resonates with me as well too, man. But that's the beauty of the gospel. Because the gospel is like Jesus says, and if you're weary and you have your burden, come to him and he'll give you rest. And that's what we have. We have this hope that actually can mitigate the fact that the world is seeing this chaos and this unrest happen, in the midst of this racial injustice. But we as Christians, we can speak something else into it, and these opportunities right here, which what Tom is doing, creates this awareness, that basically, I mean, it leads to, I want to say, it should lead to repentance, so like this type of conversations that we have, and if we continue to have these moving forward, it should do something to somebody's heart. Like, that's the gospel working in it, right? And so to go from awareness to repentance, and then to this this opportunity to express the love of Jesus Christ, and then this redemptive, abilities just falls over people, and that's all we need. I mean, it's the gospel. That's all we need. That's going to change everything. And when we're speaking in love, to our white brothers and sisters, and they have the opportunity to hear, and become aware, then it leads to just beautiful things. Yeah, it still hurts, but the power of the gospel is healing. So what the gospel means to me in my life is simply everything. I try not to shrink the cross. I try to make sure that I understand that my sins are upon that cross as well. And therefore I won't become self-righteous or judging, my white brothers and sisters for their ignorance, or for their plausible denial. It's everything. It's everything. So I love the fact that we're actually having the conversation. And I love the fact that people are going to actually see this and then say, hey, I'm starting to understand. And then honestly, like what you said too, Stephen, we're not the only ones, like we got to encourage people to go and listen to people that's been doing this for, like, in the trenches. They've been doing this forever, right? Like there's dope books out there that we can read, like we're doing this book, Stephen, together. There's great podcasts. There's great theologians that, are in the trenches on this as well, so go out there and just listen and learn and read it, so yeah, that makes any sense. I don't know.
It does.
I think for me, the way the gospel is the most encouraging is because it gives us, I'm talking specifically about Christian brothers and sisters, it gives us all the same identity to cling to, and kind of equals the playing field in a sense. I know for me personally, knowing my identity, even just from a racial standpoint, has been difficult my entire life. I've never felt white enough. I've never felt Black enough. I've never felt Puerto Rican enough. And I did my 23andMe, and our Puerto Ricans were Spanish. So it's like, I don't even know if I should say Puerto Rican anymore. So it's just, I feel like when I'm reminded of Jesus, and I was thinking about this today, and I was like Jesus, like he wasn't bilingual, but he was like bi-universal. Like, you know what I mean?
So good, Jack.
Your brand, get a trademark on that.
But just like this reality of him being fully man and fully God, having his own identity, and being so confident and secure in that, and then extending that to us as an identity to cling to, just felt so just amazing. And I think that for us to really be able to have more conversations with people that are different with us, but do hold the same, like legitimately, not just in their convictions, not just in their words, but in their deeds, hold that to be true. I think we can really have more conversations that are meaningful and impactful, and where we can learn, where we can all learn. So,
yeah, for me, what resonates is it's just I just get a sense of peace, and it's, I think, really in that I don't have to have hope in man, that because this isn't going to go away anytime soon, right? I mean, we can have lots of education. I think it's good. I think it's important people have conversations, but I mean, we live in a broken world, and these kinds of things are going to continue to happen, and it's important that people learn from it. But I know I can have peace in my heart about these things when I see them happen that, you know, God has a master plan, and that in the end he wins and the world will be made right under him. So I have that hope in that. And then Jackie, kind of you spoke about, I mean, yeah, that common identity really, I have a lot of strong feeling in that way too, about, you know, we have this common identity in Christ, and what Christ and God have kind of called us to live out as Christians. And I think we can really rally around that in unity to help further educate people, point them back to the gospel fundamentally about, you know, what does Jesus say about these things? How should we react to these things in love? And that also inspires me too, to think about how can I respond in love when I see situations. If I personally have a hard time watching any kind of film about like any that kind of Black history, because I usually walk away and I'm kind of angry because I'm like, stuff happens. So like I can have a hard time watching it and just settling my heart and that kind of stuff, to be able to have peace with it and find love to share with people and be pointed back to Christ through the gospel and the good news of the Bible is what I have a lot of hope in. And yeah, I hope we can continue having conversations of this and pointing each other back to Christ, and how Christ wants us to love one another through these situations, and constantly just being reminded of, you know, how would Jesus react to these situations? How would he respond? So we look at the way he lived his life and the people that he embraced. You know, it wasn't the people that had all the right answers, you know, that were doing all the right practices. You know, he was talking to the outcasts in society, and he was ministering to them. He was you know, I think of like Matthew, right, a tax collector. Like, I want to be friends with that guy, right? Like, you would. That's the one of the, you know, dirtiest jobs in the ancient world, you know, to be that guy. And Jesus saw his heart, and so I think wherever people stand on issues, thinking about like how can I live out the gospel to love people in that way, to find people who are broken and have that brokenness and point them to Christ and find renewal of that is what encourages me. So
yeah, guys, I love hearing all of your heart for renewal, for God making things the way that they're supposed to be through his people, empowered by his Spirit. And I know I've kept you long, so I want to give you one more question if you're okay with this. You guys cool for one more? It's super practical. We should be able to do it quick. You with this? Okay. It's super practical. Okay. Help. Okay. This is a helpful question. What's the best way that Christian brothers and sisters can reflect the love of God to the Black community? And maybe in layman's terms, how do you want to be loved? People talk about love languages all the time. You're like, this is the way that I feel and experience love, and that's great. But like, I think some of that you can't cookie cutter that. But I also think that there are certain experiences that it's really helpful to tailor and to customize love and to be intentional and thoughtful and very personal, because that's what Jesus does with us. So just for you personally, even maybe not, you don't have to speak on the entire Black community, but no funny pressure with that. But just to be helpful, how can brothers and sisters in Christ outside of the Black community love the Black community?
I could start. I think to like be loved is to be known, for starters. And I think if you like outside of the Black community, like if you have friends that are Black, like I think you should know what kind of things they've been through. I think you should ask if you have close friends that are Black, you should ask them, like, hey, what kind of things have you been through? Like, would you be willing to share that with me? Like, I want to know more about you. I want to know more about your story. I want to know more about, what your experience has been in this life so far. I think that's the biggest gift you could give someone, is like to listen to them, and to be known, and loved.
That's so great.
Yeah.
I would say step one is to ask to be known. I mean, ask us, other people of color around you, and talk with them about their experiences, their story, where they've been, things that they've done. Ask and don't speak. You can give your customary apology. I'm sorry that happened. We'll take that apology. Go ahead and take that. Don't try to individualize your experience and say like, oh, but I'm not like that though. It's like, yeah, you're not like that, but the system's like that. We all live in the system, right? So don't try to write that off, but ask and don't speak. Just let us tell our story. Let us tell you what's been going on, our fears, our concerns. And then after asking and hearing our story, learn. Ask us what are things that you can use, ways that you can begin to educate yourself on what's going on. Because again, going back to a lot of what we're experiencing here in America is not overt racism anymore. You're not really seeing the KKK walking around. I mean, I will tell you, yeah, they was out there in your homeland, out there in East Canada a couple weeks ago. It was out there. Yeah.
Were they marching in San Diego?
No, man.
No, but someone wore a mask into like a Vons for a face covering.
Clan T homeboy was walking around with the KKK hood.
I don't mean to laugh, but that's just ridiculous.
And he didn't, like, people just nobody said anything. Like, they just took pictures of him and just let him, like, do. I mean, there are probably people who probably did say something to him, but it was like, oh yeah, that's great, keep doing it. It's whatever. Like, it's a novelty type thing, and it's like, okay then, but we live out there. People of color live out in East County. Like, what are we supposed to do with that?
Yeah.
Right? Like, how does that make me feel when I can, when Lord forgive me, George got killed a couple days ago, right? Police was on him about something, but then you got this man walking around here with something blatantly offensive, and they're just taking pictures. That's cool. You're good. All right. So anyways, let's ask us our story and ask us how can you educate yourself. And we definitely will love to walk with you through that and point you out.
Yeah.
Yo, I think so far what I've heard is empathy, and yeah. For our white brothers and sisters, I think you start there. You start with empathy, and the way you do that, just by you guys actually saying it, is listening, and lending that ear, But also too, like I think apologies are great, whether it's a customary apology or a deep, heartfelt apology. Of course, you want the latter of that deep, heartfelt apology, but if we're speaking in just the realm of Christianity and having the gospel really identify us, right, then I think our white brothers and sisters would actually be sorrowful, because Jesus was all about, justice, He didn't like the injustice that's going on, and he doesn't like it today, You find yourself kind of not actually understanding or caring about it, then I think it becomes problematic, and that's where I think Blacks would majority turn you off. Like, okay, well, they're trying to tell their truth and minimize my truth, you know, instead of actually understanding and being empathetic to it, you know. So for me, it goes all the way back to just awareness. You need to know. You need to know, you know, and then, I mean, then it's the repentance, you know. There has to be some kind of form of repentance, and then there's that redemptive, you know, quality about it all, you know. I think those three things right there, if I may, that's everything, you know. It's the gospel just brought into the forefront, you know. So I think, yeah, so sit down and listen, have these conversations, take somebody out for a coffee or for a beer or whatever, you know, and really sit down and empathize with each other, you know. And I can even speak to just like us Blacks, like we can't we can't not allow them to speak their truth as well, you know. Like there has to be both ends, you know. Like after they're done listening, listen to them too, you know, because it has to go both ways, because if it's not, then it's just this one-sided conversation, and your white brothers and sisters will walk away even more defeated, and that's what you don't want, you know. You want them to be encouraged to actually say, yeah, I get it now, you know, I'm going to go have these conversations more and more and more, you know, until we actually come to this understanding, like, hey, you know, we're not, you know, restricted by our Blackness, you know, we're rooted in it, but we're not restricted by it, you know. We're defined by who Christ is, you know, just as well as you are, you know. So that's it for me.
That's good.
Yeah. In my mind, it's a few things. And some of this guys already kind of covered, but, you know, definitely empathy, listen without an agenda, I think is really key. I've been privy to several conversations where it's like someone has an agenda, they're listening, and they're waiting just to get their next line in to be, and here's all my points to defend why I feel this way about whatever you said. It's like, just listen without an agenda. Just listen, be empathetic, and I think share with people, so that you can educate people within your community who maybe don't know as well.
Yes.
You know, that's one of the powerful mediums we have of social media today, is to be able to do things like that, and just bring it to people's awareness. Because in all this stuff we're talking about, we're all human beings here, and life is sacred of anybody, you know, and everyone's someone's father, mother, daughter, sister, friend, son, like cousin. You know, we're all part of this world, and you know, we mean something to somebody somewhere. And I think helping people kind of connect at that level and see the humanity in all of this is, I think, how we get kind of beyond some of these things and start to see each other as human beings, and not as you know, Black, as white, as, you know, red, brown, Republican, Democrat, you know, you name it, like Christian, non-Christian. Like let's see each other for the human beings that we are, and I think in that we can open that conversation to point people back to Christ, and have that heart. So I look at it.
Yeah, I agree with what everyone has said so far. A couple of things that have been encouraging to me over the past couple of weeks is friends actually reaching out, whether it's via call or text or message on social media, and taking that brave step to say, hey, like, I just can imagine how awkward that might be for someone. But like them stepping outside of their self and saying like, this happened. I know it didn't happen to you directly, but you are my Black friend and I want to know how you're doing. And that has been so like powerful and life-giving to me, and has, you know, brought just such a sense of like even more hope. Like, okay, God is working in the hearts of people. I listened to a podcast the other day, and you know, the injustice and the problems that we see in our country, they were saying, you know, those took centuries to create, and we're only decades into trying to heal that. It's going to take some time. You know, it's not like we're going to wake up, you know, in a few days and racial reconciliation is going to be at hand. Like, it's going to take lots of time, and it's never going to be perfect. But just those one, like, person to person, like, I see you and I'm here to cry with you if you need to. I'm here to talk with you. I want to know you. It's huge. And even before we hopped on this call, I was like, I know that it was love, like, that caused Tom to reach out. But I was like, this is love. Like, this literally is love. Like, love is so much in action. And the fact that, you know, Tom, like, you reached out to say, I want to hear your story. And even if we only have a limited amount of time, right now, it's the beginning of something beautiful that I think can spark other hearts and minds to want to do the same. So yeah, just reaching out to your Black friends, making more than one Black friend, like, that would be pretty loving to me, to be honest. Like, if I could not only be the only one, that would be pretty cool. Because again, exhaustion. But and then the other thing, just in light of like really sort of the hard conversations of like the specific injustices that we've seen in the news, kind of nodding to what Gabe said about listening without an agenda. When someone tells you that a family member died or committed suicide or was killed in some sort of accident, like, the human response, and you're expressing your hurt and your pain, the human and like empathetic and loving response is to listen, like, ask how they're feeling, and just sometimes to like be quiet and just like sit with them in their pain. The response that is not helpful is to rattle off another deflective story of some other situation that happened that may be similar, that happened to someone of another race, or like just some other story or statistic to try and like either validate or invalidate like what that person is experiencing to you, or to say, well, we don't have all the facts. Like, that kind of talk and rhetoric is like really the opposite of love. You know, when someone dies, you don't ask them, your friend, you know, well, what were all the facts that contributed to that death? And like, was there something else that could have been done differently? Or what do you think would happen if they would have, you know, tried this path instead of that path? Like, do you think that would have made a difference? Like, that's really, really, really hurtful. And so I think just being slow to want to fix it and make it right, and just like we've all said, like, just listening, it's just it's what keeps the conversation open, so that way more can happen, more conversations can happen, and more unity. So that would be what I'd have to say.
Yeah. Guys, I just want to I know we've gone longer than I asked you to, so I really appreciate your willingness to share and be honest. And all of you have just been so honorable, I feel like, on this call. And that says a lot about your character. And it says a lot about, honestly, it says a lot about Jesus's hand on your life and his influence over you. Obviously, hopefully you know this, I love and respect each of you so much, just as brothers and sisters in general. But hearing more of your story and your experience, my heart has been moved in very personal and unique ways in the past couple weeks, couple months, really. And even on this call, my heart has been moved with more empathy and with more love. And I do believe that's driven by the Spirit of God in me as well. So I just want to say thank you. Bless you. So much respect and admiration for each of you. I want to end this call. I want to steal a prayer. Okay, I'm going to steal a prayer from Jesus in John chapter 17. He's praying to God the Father, and he's literally praying for us. He's praying for all of his disciples, past, present, future. He's looking ahead and he's praying. And he says this in John 17, verse 21. This is Jesus' prayer that I'm stealing. Speaking about us. May they all be one. As you, Father, are in me, and I am in you, may they also be in us, so that the world may believe you sent me. My prayer, I just want to pray really quickly, is that empathy really would lead to more unity across the board. And man, it would make so much of Jesus and would reflect what he's like to people who maybe haven't tasted and seen the greatest love of all. So will you pray with me quick, guys, and we can end this thing. God, thank you for tonight. That is our prayer, Holy Spirit, that you would lead each of us into unity with each other and unity with you. That's your desire, Jesus. And because you are changing us through your Spirit to be more like you in ever increasing ways, that is our desire. Let that rise up in us, and let us be men and women who empathize, who maybe even sacrifice our time and energy to gain understanding that we might not have. And let that unite us. All of us have something in common. We're made in the image of God. So I pray that, I pray that your kingdom would come, your will would be done on earth as it is in heaven, and all of us would experience you as the good and beautiful and amazing King that you are. So we love you, Jesus. Unite us. In your holy and beautiful name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Hey guys, seriously, love you so much. Thank you for doing this and putting up with me for, gosh, what is it, an hour and a half. Thank your children as well and your spouse.
Let's do it again.
Let's do it again, man. I'm in. I'm in.
Thank you so much. This was great. And it was so good to see all of you guys.
Yeah. Much love, y'all.
Peace
Bye.
out.
Thank you, guys.